My name is Veronica Chin, and 3 days after my college graduation, I walked into a law office and did something that made my entire family question my sanity. I transferred my grandparents' $10 million estate, which they had left entirely to me, into my cousin Rachel's name. My parents threatened to have me declared mentally incompetent. My siblings accused me of betraying the family. My aunts and uncles held an intervention, convinced I had lost my mind. But 6 months later, when the truth came out about what my family had been planning, every single one of them understood why I had made the most brilliant decision of my life. If you've ever had to outsmart people who underestimated you, drop a comment and subscribe, because this story will show you that sometimes the best way to protect yourself is to look completely defenseless. Let me take you back to where this really started, not at my graduation, but 4 years earlier when I was 18 years old and preparing to leave for college. My family gathered at my grandparents' home in San Francisco for what they called a celebration dinner, but what I would later recognize as a strategy session. Veronica is going to Berkeley, my grandmother, June Chin, announced proudly to the assembled relatives. Full scholarship for computer science. Our brilliant girl. My grandfather, David Chen, beamed at me from across the table. At 82, he still had the sharp mind that had built his software company from nothing into a multi-million-dollar success before selling it in the early 2000s. We've established an education trust for Veronica, he continued. But more importantly, we've updated our estate plan. When we're gone, everything will go to her. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched my mother, Linda, nearly drop her wine glass. My father, Richard, went pale. My 2 older brothers, Kenneth and Brandon, exchanged looks that I couldn't quite interpret. Around the table, aunts and uncles shifted uncomfortably. Everything? My Aunt Patricia finally asked. David, surely you don't mean everything? I mean exactly what I said. Veronica is our sole heir. But what about your children? My Uncle Thomas demanded. What about Linda and Patricia? What about your grandchildren, Kenneth, Brandon, the others? My grandfather's expression hardened. My children are adults with their own careers and incomes. My other grandchildren are well established. Veronica is the youngest, still building her future. June and I have decided this is how we want our legacy distributed. I sat frozen, embarrassed by the attention and confused by the tension crackling through the room. I didn't want to be the center of this conflict. I didn't ask for any inheritance. This is ridiculous, my mother said, her voice shaking. Veronica is 18 years old. She can't possibly manage that kind of wealth responsibly. That's why we've structured it with protections, my grandmother said calmly. Trust provisions, advisors, education requirements. We've thought this through carefully. What you've done, my father said coldly, is create a massive problem for this family. Do you have any idea what this will do to family dynamics? It will reveal who actually cares about Veronica versus who cares about our money, my grandfather replied. That's exactly what we're hoping to see. The dinner ended awkwardly, relatives leaving with tight smiles and promises to talk later. I helped my grandmother clear dishes while voices rose in the study where my parents had cornered my grandfather. You're manipulating her, my mother's voice carried through the door. She's always been your favorite, and now you're using money to ensure she remains loyal to your memory rather than to her actual family. If Veronica chooses to remain loyal to us, Linda, maybe you should ask yourself why. I didn't understand what he meant then. I thought my family was normal, that all families had tensions around money and inheritance. I was about to learn exactly how abnormal my family truly was. College started, and I threw myself into my computer science program with intensity that surprised even me. I discovered I had a gift for coding, for seeing patterns in systems, for understanding how different pieces of technology connected. My professors called me exceptional. I just felt like I was finally in a place where my mind could work the way it wanted to. My family's behavior changed immediately after that dinner. My brothers, who had barely spoken to me throughout high school, suddenly wanted to have long phone calls about my classes, my future plans, my relationship with our grandparents. My parents visited campus monthly, far more than any of my friends' parents, always asking questions about what Grandpa David and Grandma June were doing, how their health was, whether I had discussed their estate planning with them. "We're just concerned," my mother explained during one visit. "Your grandparents are making you responsible for something enormous. We want to make sure you're prepared." But their concern felt wrong, rehearsed, like they were playing roles rather than expressing genuine emotions. And the questions they asked weren't about my preparedness. They were intelligence gathering, trying to understand the exact structure of the inheritance, where money was held, who had control of what accounts. During my sophomore year, something shifted. My grandfather's business partner from decades ago, Martin Webb, reached out to me directly. We met at a coffee shop near campus, and he handed me a manila envelope. "Your grandfather asked me to give this to you if anything seemed off with your family," Martin said. "He's worried, Veronica. He thinks they're planning something." Inside the envelope were documents, financial records showing that my parents had taken out significant loans using their expected inheritance as collateral. My brothers had done the same. My Aunt Patricia and Uncle Thomas had invested in a business venture based entirely on money they expected to receive when my grandparents died. "They've all spent money they don't have yet," Martin explained. "And with your grandparents' announcement that everything goes to you, they're facing financial ruin. People do desperate things when they're desperate, Veronica. Your grandfather wants you to be careful." I stared at the documents, my hands shaking. "How much are we talking about? Combined? Your family members have obligations totaling nearly $4 million, all based on inheritance expectations your grandparents never confirmed to them." The calculation was simple and horrifying. My family needed my grandparents to die and needed the inheritance to be distributed in a way that gave them access to money. With everything going to me, a 19-year-old college student, their plans collapsed. "What do I do?" I asked Martin. "Right now? Nothing. Watch. Listen. Your grandfather has his own plans. He wanted you to have this information so you could protect yourself when the time comes." Over the next 2 years, I became hyper-aware of my family's behavior. I noticed how conversations always turned to my grandparents' health, their plans, their assets. I noticed how my brothers started suggesting I should think about fair distribution and family unity when the time came. "You wouldn't keep everything for yourself, would you?" Kenneth asked during one visit home. "I mean, that would be pretty selfish. We're all family." "Grandpa and Grandma made their decision," I replied carefully. "A decision they made years ago. Things change. People's circumstances change. When you inherit, you'll have the power to make things right." "Make what right?" "To distribute things fairly. Mom and Dad have needs. Brandon and I have families to think about. You're young and single. You don't need $10 million. The pressure was constant and subtle, a slow campaign to convince me that keeping my inheritance would make me a bad person, that real family loyalty meant redistributing wealth regardless of what my grandparents wanted. My cousin Rachel was different. She was my Aunt Patricia's daughter, 2 years older than me, working as a social worker in Oakland. We had never been particularly close growing up, but during my junior year, she reached out. "I need to talk to you about something," she said when we met for lunch. Away from the family. Rachel looked exhausted, and I soon learned why. Her mother, my Aunt Patricia, had been pressuring her to befriend me, to gain my trust, to position herself to influence my inheritance decisions. "She wants me to manipulate you," Rachel said bluntly. "She has this whole plan where I become your closest confidant, your trusted advisor, and then when you inherit, I convince you to share the money with the family. She's even offered to give me a percentage if I succeed." I felt sick. "You're telling me this why?" "Because it's wrong. Because our family is treating you like a mark instead of a person. Because someone needs to warn you." She leaned forward. "Veronica, they're all planning something. I don't know exactly what, but I hear pieces. Conversations that stop when I enter rooms. Meetings with lawyers. Something is coming, and you need to be ready. What do you think they're going to do? I think they're going to try to have you declared incompetent to manage the inheritance. I think they're going to claim your grandparents were manipulated or weren't mentally sound when they made their will. I think they're going to do whatever it takes to access that money. We talked for hours. Rachel shared everything she had overheard, every piece of the puzzle she had assembled. My family wasn't just hoping for a share of the inheritance. They were actively planning to take it. I can't believe my own mother would do this, Rachel said, tears in her eyes. But I've seen the debt she's in. Desperation makes people unrecognizable. Over the next year, Rachel and I became genuine friends, meeting regularly away from family events, building a relationship based on honesty rather than obligation. She was everything my brothers weren't, trustworthy, direct, genuinely interested in my life beyond what I might inherit. During my senior year, my grandfather's health declined rapidly. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed too late for any meaningful treatment. My grandmother called me directly. "You need to come home, Veronica. He doesn't have much time." I left school immediately, arranging to complete my finals remotely. The next 6 weeks were a blur of hospital visits, difficult conversations, and watching my brilliant grandfather diminish day by day. But in those final weeks, he made sure I understood everything. "They're going to come after the money," he told me during one of our last conversations. His voice was weak, but his mind remained sharp. "Your parents, your brothers, even Patricia and Thomas. They've built their lives on expectations I never gave them permission to have." "I know, Grandpa." Martin showed me the documents. He smiled faintly. "Good. Then you understand the danger you'll be in. Veronica, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't fight them directly. You can't win a fight against your entire family. They're older, more experienced at manipulation, and they'll use your youth against you." He gripped my hand. "Be smarter. Use what they expect against them. Make them think they've won, and then protect yourself in ways they can't see coming." "I don't understand." "You will. When the time comes, trust your instincts. And trust the people who have proven themselves trustworthy, not the ones who demand trust because of blood relation." He died 3 days later, peacefully, with my grandmother and me beside him. The funeral was large, full of people who had respected him professionally and personally. My family members all played their parts perfectly, the grieving children, the devoted siblings, the heartbroken grandchildren. But I watched them, really watched them, and saw how they calculated, how they positioned themselves, how they prepared for what came next. The will reading was scheduled for 2 weeks after the funeral. My grandmother insisted on waiting until I graduated, wanting me to finish school without the stress of inheritance battles. "Your grandfather and I planned this carefully," she told me. "Everything will happen exactly as we intended. But Veronica, you need to be very careful after the reading. Your family will reveal themselves fully then." My graduation ceremony felt surreal. I walked across the stage, accepted my diploma in computer science with highest honors, and smiled for photos while knowing that in 3 days, my entire world would change. My family attended the ceremony, all of them, making a show of pride and support. My mother posted photos on social media with captions about family bonds and shared success. My brothers gave speeches at the small reception about how proud they were of their little sister. It all felt like a performance, a final play before the masks came off. The will reading took place in the law office of Harrison and Associates. My grandmother sat beside me, her hand in mine. Across the table sat my parents, my brothers, my Aunt Patricia and Uncle Thomas, and several other relatives who had made the trip expecting to hear good news about their inheritance. The lawyer, Mrs. Harrison, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and an expression that revealed nothing, read through the legal language with practiced precision. My grandfather had left everything to my grandmother, as expected. But upon her death, which everyone assumed would follow relatively soon given her age and declining health, the entire estate would go to me. Not a portion. Not a percentage. Everything. My parents, brothers, and extended family would receive nothing. The silence in that office was absolute. Then chaos erupted. "This is unacceptable," my father shouted, standing so abruptly his chair fell backward. David was obviously not in his right mind. Cancer, medications, he couldn't have made this decision rationally. "Mr. Chin, I assure you your father was completely lucid and competent when he made these provisions," Mrs. Harrison replied calmly. "We have multiple witnesses and medical evaluations confirming his mental capacity." "Then he was manipulated," my mother said, turning to glare at me. "Veronica has been isolating him, poisoning him against his own children. This is elder abuse." "I did no such thing," I said quietly. "You've always been his favorite," Kenneth snarled. "You played on that, made him think we didn't care about him." "Did you care about him?" I asked. "Or did you care about his money?" The question hung in the air, and the truth showed on every face around the table. "We're contesting this will," my Uncle Thomas declared. "We'll tie this up in court for years if necessary. Veronica is 22 years old. She has no business controlling a fortune of this size." Mrs. Harrison closed her folder. "You're welcome to contest, but I should inform you that David Chen anticipated exactly this response. He prepared extensive documentation about his decision-making process and his reasons for this distribution. He also included a clause that any family member who contests the will forfeits even the minimal bequests he did include for them." "What minimal bequests?" Patricia demanded. "Small trust funds for each of his children, $50,000 each, to be distributed after Mrs. Chen's passing. If you contest, you forfeit that amount. $50,000 against millions in debt." The calculation showed on every face. It wasn't enough to solve their problems, but contesting meant losing even that. The meeting ended with threats, accusations, and a promise from my father that this wasn't over. My grandmother and I left through a side entrance to avoid confrontation. "They're going to escalate," she told me in the car. "Your grandfather knew they would. That's why he made certain arrangements." "What arrangements?" She smiled mysteriously. "You'll see. But first, you need to make a decision, probably the most important decision of your life. Are you brave enough to do something that will look absolutely insane to everyone around you?" "What are you talking about, Grandma?" "There's a reason your grandfather told you to be smart rather than strong. Sometimes the best defense is to make your opponents think you've already lost." Over the next 3 days, my grandmother explained the plan my grandfather had developed before his death. It was brilliant, risky, and required me to trust my instincts completely. "They expect you to fight to keep the inheritance," she explained. "They're preparing legal strategies, character assassination, campaigns to paint you as greedy and manipulative. They have lawyers looking for any possible angle to contest or delay. So what do I do? You give it away. Publicly. Dramatically. To someone they would never expect. Give away $10 million? No, darling. You appear to give it away. But in reality, you put it somewhere safe, with someone trustworthy, structured in a way that protects it absolutely while making everyone think you've made the stupidest decision possible." She laid out the plan. "I would transfer the entire inheritance to my cousin Rachel, the one person in the family who had warned me, who had proven trustworthy, who had nothing to gain from the inheritance." "Rachel?" I asked, stunned. David researched her thoroughly. "She's honest, she's struggling financially herself so the family will believe she needed money, and most importantly, she'll do exactly what you need her to do, hold it safely until the danger passes. But everyone will think I'm insane." "Exactly. You'll look impulsive, emotional, maybe even mentally unstable. Your family will be furious, but they'll also be confused. They can't contest a transfer you make voluntarily. They can't claim you're greedy if you've given everything away. And while they're trying to figure out what happened, you'll be safe." "What if Rachel betrays me?" "She won't. We've already discussed this with her. She understands the plan and agrees. But more than that, you'll have legal protections in place. The transfer will be structured so she can't actually access the money without your approval. It's a shell, a performance, but it will look completely real to everyone else. I spent 2 days thinking through every angle, every risk, every possible outcome. Finally, I made my decision. 1 week after the will reading, I called a family meeting at my grandmother's house. Everyone came, probably expecting me to announce I was sharing the inheritance or that I had decided to contest my grandfather's wishes in favor of fair distribution. Instead, I stood in front of them and made an announcement that changed everything. "I've thought a lot about what Grandpa wanted and what's right for this family," I began. My hands were shaking, but my voice remained steady. "I know there's been tension about the inheritance. I know some of you feel I'm too young to handle this responsibility. Veronica, don't do anything hasty," my mother said, her eyes gleaming with hope. "I'm not. I've thought this through carefully. I've decided to transfer the entire estate to Rachel." The silence was complete and profound. Then everyone started talking at once. "What? You can't be serious. Have you lost your mind?" Rachel sat in the corner, looking shocked, exactly as we had planned. She played her part perfectly, standing up with wide eyes. "Veronica, you don't have to do this. I want to. You've been the only in this family who treated me like a person instead of an ATM. You deserve this more than anyone." "This is insane," Kenneth shouted. "You're throwing away $10 million. I'm giving it to family. Isn't that what you all wanted? Family taking care of family?" My father turned to Rachel. "You can't accept this. She's clearly not thinking straight. We need to stop this transfer." "It's already done," Mrs. Harrison said from the doorway. She had been waiting for this moment. "The paperwork was filed this morning. The transfer is complete and legal. Veronica made this decision of her own free will, properly witnessed and documented." "She's 22, my mother screamed. "She's a child. This proves she can't handle the responsibility." "She's a legal adult who made a legal decision," Mrs. Harrison replied calmly. "There's nothing to contest." The family turned on Rachel then, demanding she refuse the transfer, accusing her of manipulation, threatening legal action. Rachel stood her ground beautifully. Veronica made her choice. "I'm not giving the money back to people who only see dollar signs when they look at her." My family left in chaos, some angry, some confused, some already plotting their next move. They called lawyers, demanded investigations, tried to find ways to undo what I had done. But legally, there was nothing they could do. I had given away my inheritance voluntarily. No court would override that decision. What my family didn't know was that the transfer was structured through a series of trusts and legal entities that meant Rachel held the money in name only. She couldn't access it without my authorization. Every dollar was protected, tracked, and completely under my control despite appearing to belong to her. My grandfather had spent the last year of his life setting up this structure with Mrs. Harrison's help. It was a legal maze that would take years to untangle, and by the time anyone figured it out, the danger would have passed. The next 6 months were fascinating to watch. My family went through stages: rage, confusion, attempts to befriend Rachel, accusations of conspiracy, and finally, reluctant acceptance that they had lost. My parents stopped calling. My brothers blocked me on social media. Aunt Patricia tried to sue Rachel for undue influence but couldn't prove any manipulation had occurred. The pressure on Rachel was intense, but she handled it with grace. She refused every attempt at bribery, ignored every threat, and maintained the story perfectly. "Veronica gave me the money because I was the only one who treated her right, and I'm keeping it." During those 6 months, something unexpected happened. Without the pressure of my family's constant manipulation, I flourished. I accepted a job at a tech startup in Silicon Valley. I made genuine friends who knew nothing about my inheritance drama. I started therapy to process the complicated grief of losing my grandfather while losing my family relationship. Rachel and I grew even closer. She understood what I was going through because she was experiencing her own version of family betrayal. Her mother stopped speaking to her. Her siblings accused her of stealing their inheritance. They can't see that by pushing you away. They proved exactly why Grandpa made his decision, Rachel said during one of our regular dinners. They valued money over relationships, and now they have neither. 6 months after the transfer, my grandmother called me to her home. She looked healthier than she had in months, color back in her cheeks, energy in her movements. "It's time," she said simply. "Time for what?" "For the truth. For everyone to understand what really happened." She had invited the entire family for what she called a final family meeting. They came reluctantly, probably expecting another lecture about family unity or forgiveness. Instead, my grandmother stood before them and delivered a speech that exposed everything. "For the past 6 months, you've all been angry about Veronica's decision to transfer her inheritance to Rachel. You've called her stupid, impulsive, mentally unstable. You've tried to undo her choice, to manipulate Rachel, to find any possible way to access the money you believe you deserve." She paused, her gaze moving across each face. "What you don't know is that this was exactly what David and I planned." "What are you talking about?" my father demanded. "Veronica didn't give away her inheritance. She protected it. The transfer to Rachel was a legal structure designed to shield the money from exactly what we knew you would do, try to contest, manipulate, or steal it." Mrs. Harrison stepped forward, holding a folder. "The money has been in a protected trust structure the entire time. Rachel has been acting as a custodial holder, but Veronica has maintained complete control. Every dollar is accounted for and untouchable by anyone except Veronica." The realization dawned slowly across their faces. They had been outmaneuvered by a 22-year-old and an elderly woman they had underestimated. "You set us up," my mother whispered. "No," I said, speaking for the first time. "I protected myself from people who saw me as an obstacle to money rather than as family. Everything you did over the past 6 months proved exactly why Grandpa made his decision. You manipulated us." Kenneth shouted. "I gave you an opportunity to show who you really are. You chose to reveal your true priorities." My grandmother continued. "David knew this would happen. He knew that announcing Veronica as sole heir would force you to show your true natures. He hoped he was wrong. He wanted to believe his children and family would support his granddaughter. But he was right to be suspicious, wasn't he?" The silence was her answer. "The inheritance remains with Veronica, exactly as David intended. Rachel has been compensated appropriately for her role in protecting it, but the fortune belongs to the person who earned it through character, not blood." My family left that day, some apologetic, most angry, all of them understanding that they had lost permanently. The legal structure was unbreakable. The money was secure. And most importantly, I was safe from people who had proven they would sacrifice family for wealth. In the years since, I've built a life I'm proud of. I used part of the inheritance to start a foundation supporting foster children and youth aging out of the system, kids who understand what it means to lack family support. I invested wisely, following my grandfather's careful teachings. I bought a modest home and lived below my means, never flaunting wealth that makes people see dollar signs instead of humanity. Rachel and I remain close. She used her compensation to pay off her student loans and buy a small house, still working as a social worker because it's her calling, not because she needs the money. We laugh sometimes about those 6 months when the entire family thought I had gone insane. "You know what the best part was?" she said recently over dinner. "Watching them realize that the person they dismissed as young and foolish had outsmarted all of them. My relationship with my parents and brothers is cordial but distant. We exchange holiday cards and attend major family events with polite awkwardness. They know they can't access my money, so they've stopped trying. Some relationships recover from betrayal. Ours simply exists in a state of permanent awareness." My grandmother lived another 3 years after that final family meeting, long enough to see me established in my career, confident in my choices, happy in my life. Before she died, she told me she was proud of me, not because I had kept the money, but because I had been brave enough to look foolish in order to stay safe. That takes real strength, she said. Most people need to look strong. You were strong enough to look weak while being smarter than everyone around you. Her words guide me still. I learned that protection doesn't always look like armor and walls. Sometimes it looks like vulnerability, like giving something away, like appearing to make the worst decision possible while actually making the most brilliant move. I learned that family means nothing if the relationship is based solely on obligation or expectation. Real family shows up without being asked, protects without demanding recognition, and loves without calculating the cost. I learned that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are exactly the ones you need protection from, and recognizing that truth isn't betrayal, it's survival. My name is Veronica Chen. I'm 28 years old now, and I'm living exactly the life my grandfather hoped I would build. Not because of the money I inherited, but because of the wisdom and courage it took to protect it. If you've ever had to make a choice that looked insane to everyone around you but was actually the smartest thing you could do, I see you. If you've ever had to protect yourself from people who demanded your trust without earning it, you're not alone. Drop a comment with your story. Subscribe to hear more about navigating the complicated truth that sometimes looking foolish is the smartest strategy of all. And remember, real strength isn't about winning every battle. It's about being smart enough to win the war while your opponents think you've already lost. Thank you for listening to my story. May you find the courage to protect what matters most, even when everyone around you thinks you're making the biggest mistake of your life. Especially then.